PHELIA, Exuberant Shepherd, is an absolute menace, and I'm here to share how to get the most out of this aggressive, value-generating corgi. She has a lot going on for her. Most notably, she can blink out any non-land permanent on the battlefield until end of turn, which makes her engaging and fun because you're always considering the best blink target for the situation. But there are two catches. She has to attack to trigger the ability, and you're incentivized to blink your own permanents to put +1 counters on PHELIA, which will make her future attacks safer, and she'll end up putting a lot of damage out throughout the entire game. This deck runs a lot of 3-mana spells, so that PHELIA always has a target to get her a +1 counter on her first swing. Now allow me to share with you my favorite tricks for PHELIA, Exuberant Shepherd. The Princess Takes Flight is the best card in the deck, which is kind of a crazy thing to say because normally this is a very underwhelming enchantment saga. However, we're going to exile a creature when it enters the battlefield, and then we're going to blink it and exile another creature from the battlefield, and then at the beginning of our next, well, not the beginning, at the end of our next draw step, we're going to give PHELIA +2/+2 in flying, which is nuts because that's a crazy buff to give her so early in the game. And spoiler alert, we're going to be doing this every single turn. So we're going to blink it, exile another creature at the end of the turn, and then the next draw step, she's going to get the buff again, and then again and again. We're going to just do that loop over and over again. And if this ever does reach the 3rd chapter and it says return the exiled creature back to the battlefield, we only have to worry about one of those creatures coming back because all the other ones we exiled with it, those were different instances of the card, so it only remembers the one creature that it exiled when it entered the battlefield. So this card is just crazy. I can't get over how busted this card is in this deck. Act of Authority is going to keep your opponent's artifacts and enchantments completely locked down. It exiles a target artifact or enchantment when it enters, and remember, PHELIA is going to make that enter kind of a second time in the same turn. Then, at our upkeep, we may exile another artifact or enchantment, but we have to give Active Authority away, which would be a downside if PHELIA wouldn't just fetch it right back for us in combat. PHELIA can blink Active Authority while an opponent controls it, and it will return under our control, which also still gives PHELIA the +1 counter. Amazing. Bucknard's Everfull Purse is another game of fetch for PHELIA, but this time with some insane ramp. Roll a d4 for treasure and give it away. Then blink it with PHELIA to get it back, and repeat as many turns as necessary. Honestly, just even rolling a 1 is worth it, as long as your opponents don't get the chance to even use it. It's just straight up ramp, and it can be downright disgusting if you get 3 or 4 treasures in one roll. Attack triggers are great blink targets too because you can blink them with PHELIA to still get the benefits of the attack trigger and still get the +1 counter. Exalted will push PHELIA over the edge into Voltron territory, being cheap, reliable buffs for your commander, both early and later in the game. Duelist's Heritage and Flaming Fist are the best options to give PHELIA Double Strike, and Thunder Lasso and Greatsword of Tyr can tap down enemy blockers. All of these provide very powerful buffs to PHELIA while still being completely valid blink targets. Luminarch Aspirant and Orzhov Advocate provide PHELIA with extra +1 counters per turn. Orzhov Advocate with the potential to stop players from attacking you entirely, and if they put a +1 counter on a creature you're afraid of, you can always blink that creature with PHELIA, getting rid of all the counters on that creature. Don't forget PHELIA has Flash. Together Forever and Samwise the Stout-Hearted can bring PHELIA back to your hand when she's in danger, and if you have 2 mana still up, you can just cast her again before your next turn to make sure she doesn't miss out on getting her attack triggers. Together Forever is crazy powerful on turn 3 because it enters, you can support PHELIA for a +1 counter, then you blink it, get a +1 counter from support again, and another +1 counter from PHELIA's blink, making her a 5/5 at the end of turn 3. Glaring Spotlight is a 1-drop that's going to let PHELIA target hexproof creatures your opponents control. It can also provide board protection or unblockable to help close out a game. A very versatile card in any deck, but a cheap way to let PHELIA target hexproof creatures is what makes it shine here. Single Combat and Promise of Loyalty are disgusting board wipes to include in any Voltron deck, but Fraying Line is definitely the funniest. Play it and blink it to mark 2 of your creatures with rope counters, letting them survive the inevitable board wipe. Each of your opponents will have to pay 2 mana to mark 1 creature for them to save, and if it gets back to your turn again, simply don't pay the 2 and wipe the board, and you'll be guaranteed to be controlling the most creatures. The Eternal Wanderer is a planeswalker that we can get rid of 4 loyalty counters on to wipe the board except for 1 creature per player. But we can just blink this to get the loyalty counters back, and so we can repeat this every single turn cycle, completely locking down the board. Teo, Geometric Tactician, can similarly use his -2 ability on each of your turns, repeatedly picking the direction most advantageous to you. He also provides flying blockers every time he enters the battlefield, so just in case he wasn't ridiculous enough. Mystic Barrier also lets you dictate the only direction players may attack while keeping options open for yourself. If you want to attack a player in one direction but don't want to get hit by the player from the other, you can pick one at your upkeep and then the other once you blink the enchantment and it returns to the battlefield. Martial Impetus, Redemption Arc, and Vow of Duty are all aura enchantments that can stop opponents from attacking you. Or they can simply buff PHELIA. She's attacking every turn anyways, so goading her has no real drawback. She can also blink these auras off of herself, letting her move them around to whatever is the biggest, scariest creature on the board. PHELIA is a huge threat, and you are almost guaranteed to sprint into the lead every game on turn 3. You're going to need protection spells. I have 22. I have 22 different ways to keep PHELIA on the board. 10 of those being instant or flash spells. The number can increase or decrease based on how much removal your playgroup tends to play, but PHELIA is cheap, and if someone tries to remove her early in the game, it's probably just wisest to let her be removed. And so you can keep your protection spells in your hand, and they're going to feel much, much better later in the game. Paying 4 mana for your commander is a totally reasonable number, and it stops you from staying really far in the lead early in the game. And then everybody just gains up on you to take you down. PHELIA is fast, she is aggressive, and she is threatening. And she has a lot of versatility and great tricks that provide a lot of value. I built this deck for about $55, and even though it's my cheapest deck right now, it might be my strongest. I'd love to hear what you guys think of it, so leave a comment with a card recommendation, or if you think my choice is questionable, I love to hear that too. Make sure to check out the deck list below and subscribe for more Magic the Gathering content. Have a nice day.